দর্শক আমন্ত্রণ বিশ্ব শরণার্থী দিবস 2014 নিয়ে আরটিভির বিশেষ অনুষ্ঠানে আপনাদের সঙ্গে আছে আমি সৈয়দ আশিক রহমান। আমাদের আজকের অতিথি বাংলাদেশে নিযুক্ত জাতিসংঘের শরণার্থী বিষয়ক সংস্থা UNHCR এর কান্ট্রি রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ মিস স্টিনা লুংডেল এবং জাতীয় মানবাধিকার কমিশনের চেয়ারম্যান প্রফেসর ডক্টর মিজানুর রহমান। ওয়েলকাম at RTV studio. Let's talk about refugee.
There is a legal definition of a refugee as someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution, and because of this fear they have fled and crossed an international border, and the flight is linked to one of the 5 convention reasons, which is religion, race, political opinion, nationality, or belonging to a particular social group. But we also include people who flee indiscriminate violence from war, civil conflicts, or internal wars, etc. A general state of violence.
Especially we concern about the children.
Yes, children are often bearing the brunt of this, and women and children often make up for a disproportionate amount of the number of refugees all over the world.
Dr. Mizanur Rahman, would you please like to add something about refugee?
I think that Stina has given the correct and a very appropriate legal definition of what a refugee is. I would simply add that I think UNHCR has a poster which says, one refugee is too many. I think that's the essence of the refugee problems. That whenever a person is persecuted to the extent that he or she chooses to leave the country, not chooses, but is forced, is compelled to leave your motherland, your country of domicile, and living by everything, all connections, all bonds, all relatives, the weather, the environment, the culture that you live in, the atmosphere where you grew up, and you leave everything behind and forced to flee your country and take shelter or refuge, God knows for how long, and that is, you take it as a destiny. That is the depth of the pain and suffering of a person who is a refugee. No matter what are the amenities that are provided in the refugee camp, no matter what is the standard of life maintained in a refugee camp, but can you bring him or her the peace of mind of living in his or her own home, own milieu and atmosphere, around and surrounded by your friends and relatives, singing the song, dancing freely. So this is what misses from the life of a person. And that's why nobody would want to be a refugee. And that's why we believe that the refugees and their rights must be respected and protected by every single civilized nation on earth.
A very positive observation from your side. Ms. Stina, what is the current situation of refugees worldwide and in Bangladesh?
Well, I wish I could give you good news, but the sad news is that we have actually never seen so many forcible displaced as we do today, with more than 50 million, and this is the highest since the Second World War. For example, we have the Syria war, which has been, a catastrophe for humanitarian actors. We have 9 million totally displaced by the war in Syria. 4 million have fled the country, with 1 million in Lebanon. 1 million in Lebanon means 25% of the Lebanese population is now refugees. That would be like 40 million refugees coming to Bangladesh. You can imagine the strain on that country. 400,000 children, 100,000 are now going to public schools, but it is, it's coming to the end where we can't expect much more. But Syria is not only the only crisis, unfortunately. We have major crises in Iraq. Iraq, we had millions of refugees. We have hundreds of thousands of them in Syria. And because of the Syria war, they have now a second time been displaced. We have now recently, there's crisis in Iraq in itself, which have now seen 300,000 people displaced. We have major crises in Central African Republic, in Mali, in Nigeria, all over the world. We have a continuous crisis in Afghanistan. We have now most recently in Ukraine, where we also see, but probably the longest crisis we have in Somalia. We have 1 million people from Somalia who are displaced, and they have been refugees for more than 30 years. And they have a desire to go home and to continue their life, to restart their life in the motherland.
Dr. Mizanur Rahman, as a chairman of National Human Rights Commission Bangladesh, what do you think in this issue?
This is always to be looked into as an international issue, because the dimension is international. But what is important for the individual states is to appreciate and acknowledge the gravity of the problem of the refugees. That the refugees are not someone who simply want to come and cross the border and come and take refuge in your country. And therefore, the principle is what we call non-refoulement, that whenever someone is persecuted and coming and wants to take shelter, you cannot send him or her back. You cannot refuse entry.
Ms. Stina, would you like to add some?
I would like to add that, it is, of course, not a national problem, because they are fleeing the country to save their lives. And of course, the main burden is carried by the neighboring countries. This is what we are seeing, like 86% of today's refugees are staying in the developing world, mainly in the neighboring countries.
What is the fate of the people or children, children who born in between?
Today, in Bangladesh, in the refugee camps, 60% of the population are born in the camps, because it's been so prolonged. And we even have people who are born here themselves, and now they are giving birth to their children in a refugee camp, where there's no real freedom of movement. This is not your future. And what do you want?
Education.
They have education and basic education, and we have recently started secondary education, which we are very glad. But it's still not what the people want.
What is the government initiative?
The government, in collaboration with UNHCR, they are implementing a number of projects. As a matter of fact, the government is taking the overall sort of toll and the responsibility of taking care of protecting the rights of the refugees in the camps, But you see, in case of Bangladesh, the problem is of a different dimension. Around 31,000 registered refugees.
Yeah.
But now, these are only registered 31,000. The number is not too many, But if you think of those who are undocumented or unregistered,
maybe 2 times bigger.
Not only 2 times, there is around 400,000 unregistered Rohingya refugees.
Yeah.
And that is a problem, Now, if you have only 31,000 and you are bringing them, giving them education.
You can take care of them. You know the numbers.
To a certain extent, you can take care, And you have the data, you have the information about these 31,000. But what about this 400,000 plus who are roaming in the country somewhere? They're living their life, But the government, in any case, they're, they're using the resources, the facilities and everything, whatever we have. But we are not able to identify them as the refugees. Yeah. And they're also deprived of the privileges and the rights as the refugees are entitled to. So it has negative impact on both the sides, you see. On the sides of the refugees themselves, because they're deprived of the benefits of international law and protection. But the government is also losing, because you don't have these statistics or number. Had we had them registered, documented, probably the government could have now come to Stina and said, come on, Stina, UNHCR, this is what we have, and we want international assistance to protect these 400,000 plus
Exactly.
people, because we are a very resource constrained
So
country.
that way international community could work together.
Precisely, yes.
Well,
But the government has recently adopted a national strategy, and one component of that strategy is that they will list the undocumented Myanmar nationals who are living outside the camp. We have UNHCR have offered our assistance, and we think that this will be a great first step to actually see who is in the country, what's the profile, and also it will allow us to program and get the assistance from the international community to really provide the basic humanitarian assistance for this population. So we are looking forward, and we hope that this listing will take place.
But let me just tell you one thing, to this, just adding to this. There was a huge problem with the birth registration of the children in the refugee camps and both out and also outside. And as a matter of fact, the National Human Rights Commission, jointly with the UNHCR Bangladesh, we conducted a workshop, and then from that workshop, from the feedback of the workshop, we made very concrete recommendations to the government, urging the government that since birth registration is something mandatory in this country, therefore no children whatsoever, irrespective of origin, irrespective of the parenthood, irrespective of the matrilineage or patrilineage or anything, every child has the right to have his or her birth registered by the country, no matter whether they are of Rohingya origin or not. That becomes immaterial. So I think progress is happening on the ground. Given the situation as it is, probably we expect more. Sky is always the limit, right, Stina? So
well,
obviously,
Dr. Mizanur Rahman and Ms. Stina will talk on the consequences and other issues after a short break. দর্শক দেখছেন বিশ্ব শরণার্থী দিবস 2014 নিয়ে আরটিভির বিশেষ অনুষ্ঠান। এই পর্যায়ে নিচ্ছি ছোট্ট একটি বিরতি, ফিরছি একটু পরেই। সে পর্যন্ত আমাদের সাথে থাকুন। দর্শক আবারও আমন্ত্রণ বিশ্ব শরণার্থী দিবস 2014 নিয়ে আরটিভির বিশেষ অনুষ্ঠানে। কথা বলছিলাম বাংলাদেশে নিযুক্ত জাতিসংঘের শরণার্থী বিষয়ক সংস্থা UNHCR এর কান্ট্রি রিপ্রেজেন্টেটিভ মিস স্টিনা লুন্ডেল এবং বাংলাদেশ মানবাধিকার কমিশনের চেয়ারম্যান প্রফেসর ডক্টর মিজানুর রহমানের সঙ্গে। ওয়েলকাম এগেইন RTV studio. Miss Stina, what basic steps is UNHCR taking to address these refugee issues?
UNHCR is a humanitarian organization. We provide and help refugees with basic assistance and protection. We are not that operational solving the problem, because often it's political problem that starts with disagreement, and there has to be a political solution to it. So at this very day, I would like to urge the international community and all political leaders of this world to step up the efforts and seek tangible, concrete political solutions to the displacement.
There is a lack of understanding and appreciation of the problem at times from the political quarters, especially those in power. It happens that they do not acknowledge and they do not recognize that the refugees who had fled the country and taken refuge in another country are their nationals. So that makes the first problem. So what I can share, that with regard to the Rohingya refugees in the country, what we did at the National Human Rights Commission, that we thought that in order to come to a permanent resolution of this problem, we need to engage ourselves with our counterpart. Why don't you come to Bangladesh, be our guest, we'll take you around, and you see for yourselves that these are your citizens, how they are languishing in the refugee camps. So once they come, once they see, and then find, after all, we're all human beings, and I believe then you feel the sense of urgency within yourself that this is a problem that needs to be addressed immediately. So we are waiting, the invitation is standing, we are waiting for an opportune moment when they would be coming and visiting us, and so that we can take our dialogue, that we had in Yangon a step further towards, appreciation of the problem by the Myanmarese side and then come probably to some kind of durable solution of the problem.
Yeah,
What about the statelessness?
Can I just
sure.
add something to that? Yeah, there is with the Rohingya population, there is a particularly added complexity, which means that they are actually stateless. Myanmar does not acknowledge them as its citizen. And they say that they are Bangladeshi and Bengali origin. Bangladeshis, these are not our citizens because they are Myanmaris. So that means, of course, an added complexity of this particular region, in this particular region.
What is the key challenges regarding refugees issues?
Our message this year is one family torn apart by a crisis is one too many. And we would like to make sure that family are reunited, and we would like to have many, many more returning to the place where they originate from. Whether that will be feasible or not, I don't know. But I would see that that is our key challenge, to return people to where they came from.
Many times refugees are suffering in different type of health related problem and nutritious problem it is there. What is the situation now?
Nutrition is a problem in rural Bangladesh also. So this is something which is even in grave form inside the camps. The reason being that how the camps are being administered, whether every single head is being counted, and whether adequate food is being provided.
We started together with the government on a joint verification. We went from shelter to see who is actually living there, and the ultimate aim was to have a joint database and to include the people who are actually there. That has meant that thousands of more people will be included in the food distribution. Now, together with the joint database and the cash voucher, I believe we will address the malnutrition and we will be on track.
Great. Well, tell me, what are the psychological impacts?
It's horrendous, horrendous. You can imagine to sit for 22 years and wait and wait and wait. At one point, they are ruthless and they want to go on. They want to. They are
don't
eager
you think that
to stop.
violence comes out of that also?
It does.
Well,
it does.
Stina, I don't know. Maybe Mr. Syed, you must have also read that novel, that fiction, The Reluctant Fundamentalist. But this is what happens. You see that if you wait for too long and you're frustrated, always longing for something better, always longing to go back home, to your own environment, to your own society,
to your house,
to your own culture, to your house, but you are birthed from that, then ultimately what happens? What do you mean? That is resortion to violence, to terrorism, to unrest.
Maybe not to terror, but we actually have violence in the camps too. We have alarming rates of domestic violence. And when you speak to the women, they are, of course, sad, but in a strange way, they also defend their husband. They said, what can he do?
Born in a place, in a camp which doesn't belong to you. It's totally alien, to yourself. It's totally alien.
And every time there is a mental pressure that I am refugee and somebody pushed me out. Yes, exactly. I want to go back my home. It's not my state.
Yes.
I would like to add that every time I visit the camps, they always say, we are so appreciative of the Bangladeshi people who allow us to be here, but please, we want a solution. Please, let us go home. And if we can't go home, let us go to another country. We can't bear this anymore.
Hope for the best, Dr. Mizanur Rahman.
Yeah.
How government is working on this sector?
Compared to the past, at present the government is more responsive and very positive towards the treatment of the refugees in Bangladesh, and working very closely, if I am not mistaken, with UNHCR.
Yeah. And
the government is taking certain very positive steps to protect and promote the rights of the, in-camp refugees. So that is the number one there. Number two, till now there had been a kind of an attitude from the government of not recognizing the existence of 400 plus undocumented Rohingyas, but there is a shift in attitude there also. The government is acknowledging, recognizing, and now they're almost in the process of going for documentation of these unregistered refugees. So that will be a great leap forward towards putting them under the same umbrella of protection and promotion. So this is very good, you know. But that I believe that the international community has failed to protect the rights of the Rohingya refugees adequately and effectively for the last almost 3 decades. We have seen that the Western powers, many of the Western countries, have rather, you know, sort of patted the military regime, the immediate past military regime in Myanmar, which did not probably encourage the Myanmarese government to take certain concrete steps to take back the Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh.
Without putting the blame on anyone or like that, I think that we have, you know, collectively say that we haven't stood up for the rights of the Rohingya population globally. Not only Bangladesh has seen the Rohingya refugees, they're all over the region. They are now being trafficked to Thailand, Malaysia, smuggled, travel everywhere. It is a regional problem, but it's also a global problem because it has been going on, you know, from decades. And how long more are we going to wait for a solution? How long are these people going to wait for going back to the motherland from the society that they grew up with, where they were born, and the society that they belong to? How long are we going to wait? So again, I appeal to all actors. We have to come together and we have to find a solution.
Actually, the solution should come globally. And the community, global community, should work on Myanmar issue.
But I would say not only globally, but also the region should come together in various platforms to make a because it's the vast majority of the Rohingya are in the region. And therefore, I think that a regional approach to it and take the lead in regional platforms.
You know, as a matter of, there are international studies also, and the research shows that one of the core problems lies in the Citizenship Act of Myanmar. So until and unless the Citizenship Act of Myanmar is addressed correctly and appropriately to accommodate all the different ethnicities and the nationals of Myanmar, this question is very difficult to resolve, number one. And number two is, you see, in order to resolve the situation of any refugee, or for that matter, protection and promotion of human rights of all, you know, one has to acknowledge that an act of injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So it is not a local problem. It is not a regional problem. It is always an international problem. Which should bother all of us in all the
we must identify it. Thank you. We are almost end of the program. So do you have any message for our viewers?
Well, I have a message for the international community. Please gather with us today and agree that one family torn apart for refugees or forceful displacement is one family too many.
Thank you, Dr. Mizanur Rahman.
Well, I'd also probably echo the same sentiment and say that the international community, you must acknowledge that Bangladesh had taken its toll of burden, has carried the burden for too long, and now it's for the international community also to come forward and with all honesty and diligence probably look at this problem and try for a durable solution of the refugee problems, because no one would want to be a refugee, and we don't want to see any refugees anywhere in the world.
Thank you very much again. We think it is our responsibility to bring the things in front of the people, in front of the world. দর্শক, বিশ্বজুড়ে চলমান রাজনৈতিক অস্থিরতা, যুদ্ধবিগ্রহ এবং অভ্যন্তরীণ বিভিন্ন ইস্যুতে শরণার্থী সংখ্যা বেড়ে চলেছে, যার শিকার হচ্ছে লক্ষ লক্ষ নিরপরাধ শিশু। বিশ্ব শরণার্থী দিবসে আমরা বলতে চাই, ভবিষ্যতে একটি শিশুও যেন শরণার্থী পরিচয়ে বেড়ে না ওঠে, এই প্রত্যাশায় শেষ করছি আজকের অনুষ্ঠান। এতক্ষণ আমাদের সাথে থাকার জন্য ধন্যবাদ।